The ballroom smelled of beeswax and winter roses, polished floors reflecting the chandeliers like a second, trembling sky. Every step echoed too loudly for Ilara's liking, though she stood still near the wall, hands folded, spine straight, eyes lowered as if humility could make her smaller. Silk brushed silk, laughter chimed and collided, and somewhere a violin drew a note so thin it felt like a blade against her ears. She was the one nobody noticed, the sister positioned where shadows were kind enough to hide a face that had never learned how to be beautiful. Across the room, her younger sister, Seraphine, glowed. There was no other word for it. Candlelight adored her, caught in her hair, curved itself along her smile, softened at her shoulders. Men turned as if tugged by invisible strings. Women measured her with a mix of admiration and calculation. Their father stood beside her, proud and stiff-backed, as though Seraphine were an asset he had polished himself. Ilara had learned early what it meant to be the second daughter. She had learned how to read the floor, how to sense where she could stand without obstructing a view, how to listen without expecting to be heard. Her mother had taught her the virtues, kindness, patience, quiet endurance, and her father had taught her, without words, that these were not the ones that secured alliances. The Duke arrived late, the way men of consequence always did, and the room adjusted itself around him. Conversations faltered, then resumed at a higher pitch, like birds startled from a hedge. He wore black velvet trimmed with silver thread, a color choice that spoke of confidence bordering on defiance. His hair was dark, his expression controlled, eyes sharp enough to cut through the layered politeness of the gathering. Ilara felt him before she saw him, a shift in the air, a pressure behind the eyes. She raised her gaze despite herself and found him surveying the room with the measured patience of someone accustomed to choosing rather than being chosen. Her father noticed too. He straightened, guided Seraphine forward with a gentle hand at her elbow, and practiced the smile that had earned him everything he owned. Ilara remained where she was, the echo of their footsteps fading into the music. Introductions were made. Names were exchanged like coins. Compliments glittered and fell. Ilara did not hear the words, but she saw the shapes of them, the way Seraphine laughed at the right moments, the way her father leaned in, conspiratorial, as though inviting the Duke into a shared understanding. Then her father did something unexpected. He turned, scanning the room, eyes skimming past Ilara as they always did before snagging, briefly, on her dark dress, her plain face. He hesitated, just long enough for the Duke to notice the pause. "My daughters," her father said, gesturing broadly, as if he were presenting a matched set. "You've met Seraphine, of course. And this is Ilara." The Duke's gaze shifted. It landed on Ilara with the weight of attention she was unused to bearing. She felt the familiar instinct to retreat, to soften herself, to disappear. Instead, she curtsied, precise and unadorned, as she had been taught. Her father cleared his throat. "If you are considering, well." He smiled, indulgent, and lowered his voice, though it carried easily. "Take the pretty one." The words struck Ilara like a hand across the face. They were not new, she had heard them before in different forms, in quieter rooms. Still, spoken here, under chandeliers, before a man whose opinion could rearrange her entire life, they burned. Seraphine flushed, whether with pleasure or embarrassment Ilara could not tell. The Duke did not smile. He did not laugh. He looked from Seraphine back to Ilara, his gaze sharpening rather than softening, as if the insult had focused him. "Pretty," he repeated, tasting the word. His eyes lingered on Ilara now, not unkindly, but with an intensity that made her chest tighten. "Is that the measure you recommend?" Her father chuckled. "In matters of marriage, Your Grace, it is an efficient one." A beat passed. 2. The music seemed to falter, as if the violinist had sensed something amiss. The Duke stepped closer, to Ilara. "I choose her," he said. For a moment, the room froze. Ilara thought she must have misheard. The Duke's hand extended, palm up, a simple gesture that felt impossibly large. Her father's smile cracked. "I beg your pardon?" "I choose Ilara," the Duke repeated, his voice calm, carrying easily over the renewed murmurs. "If I am to take a wife from your household." Seraphine stared, her expression brittle with shock. Ilara felt the room tilt. She became suddenly aware of every flaw she had catalogued over the years, the crookedness of her nose, the plainness of her mouth, the scar near her hairline from a childhood fall. None of them seemed to matter to the man standing before her, waiting. "You may reconsider," her father said quickly, a note of strain creeping in. "She is not what most men seek." The Duke's eyes did not leave Ilara's face.
I am not most men. He offered his hand again. Ilara's pulse thundered in her ears.
This was a mistake, surely a whim, a provocation, a misunderstanding that would correct itself if she did nothing. She glanced at her father, searching for guidance she knew would not come. So she did the unthinkable. She took the Duke's hand. His grip was warm, steady, not possessive but sure. A small thing, but it anchored her. Walk with me, he said quietly. They moved through the ballroom as though it parted for them, whispers blooming in their wake. Ilara kept her eyes forward, every instinct screaming to look back, to apologize, to explain herself into invisibility. Instead, she focused on the measured rhythm of the Duke's steps, the faint scent of cedar and something sharper ink. Perhaps, when they reached the edge of the terrace, he released her hand. Cold air swept in, carrying the promise of snow. For a moment, neither of them spoke. I owe you an explanation, Ilara said at last, because silence had always frightened her more than honesty. My father did not mean. I know exactly what he meant, the Duke said. He leaned against the stone balustrade, posture relaxed, eyes intent. Do you agree with him? She hesitated. The truth pressed against her ribs. I know I am not pretty, she said carefully. I do not blame him for stating it. The Duke's mouth curved, not in amusement, but in something like recognition. And yet you do not say you are unworthy. I did not say I was worthy either. He laughed softly at that, a sound unguarded enough to surprise her. You see? That is precisely why I chose you. She frowned. I don't understand. Your sister knows she is beautiful, he said. She has been told so her entire life. Beauty has shaped her expectations, her fears, her defenses. You, on the other hand, have learned to see. To listen. To endure without believing. Endurance is the same as weakness. Ilara felt something shift, a subtle loosening she had not known she carried. You do not know me. No, he agreed. But I recognize a woman who has been underestimated. I know what that does to a person. I also know what it makes possible. She studied him then, really studied him, the controlled strength, the weariness behind the confidence, the faint scar at his jaw. And what does it make possible? Choice, he said simply. When nothing is handed to you, you learn to choose with care. The door behind them opened briefly, a wash of warmth and sound spilling out before closing again. The world beyond the terrace felt distant, unreal. You realize, Ilara said, voice steadying, that this will not be forgiven easily. My father will resent me. My sister will survive, the Duke finished. As will you. I am not offering you a fairy tale. I am offering you a partnership. If you accept. She considered the years ahead she had imagined for herself, quiet, narrow, defined by what she was not. This was terrifying. This was also, undeniably, a door. I accept, she said. He inclined his head, a gesture of respect rather than triumph. Then let us return, he said. They will be waiting. As they stepped back into the light, Ilara felt the weight of eyes upon her again. This time, she did not lower her gaze. She stood straighter, her hand light on the Duke's arm, and understood, perhaps for the first time, that being chosen was not the same as being valued, but choosing herself, here and now, was the beginning of both.